Alright folks, welcome to Chapter 9 Gameplay. Alright, the objectives, blah blah blah, and blah 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 blah. Alright, so making games fun. So execution matters more than innovation, and if you take a game like Minecraft, Minecraft wasn't very great graphically. There really was no innovation there. I mean, other than mining some blocks. And even before Minecraft, there were other block building games that had better graphics. But Minecraft allowed us to really unleash our total creativity and give us a big game world where we could kind of do what we want. And threw in a few extra elements like the creeper and things like that. And that's why Minecraft did so well. The base game, was fun. If your core or base game is fun, pretty much almost the rest of the stuff doesn't matter. And then obviously over time he's worked on it, and now there's a lot more elements to it and things like that. But when Minecraft first came out and people started buying it and the word of mouth spread, there were no mods, there was no redstone, it was just a block building game, but it was so fun that people started playing it, people started showing their friends, other friends started playing it, and then it just kind of spread like wildfire. So aspects of game development that contribute to fun: avoiding errors. Your basic craftsmanship is the important part. The base game, the core game. Tuning and polishing is second. If you're making a first-person shooter and the movement and the shooting is not fun, doesn't feel right, your game's going to suck no matter how much polish you put into it. Alright, then they talk about, imaginative variations of the game, premise is third, and true design innovation is only 5% of the fun. The core game has to be fun. Let me show you some examples. Alright, this first example is a game called Ramiro's Aftermath. And now it's not George Romero, the guy that made the Undead movies. It's actually his son, who is not actually involved in the game at all. They just basically paid him to use his name, and now it's Ramiro's Aftermath. So the premise of the game is it's a survival game, there's a zombie apocalypse, and you have to survive. So really, it's a first-person shooter survival game. But you look at the game through third person, which is a little wonky. And then when you hit your right mouse button, then you kind of aim down your sight, kind of like first person, but your gun kind of takes up a lot of the screen. So one issue is the third person, first person switch between that you always have to do. That's not fun. And second, hacking. First, they made this game and it was called War Incorporated, and it was just people against people. Then they thought, hey, let's put some zombies in it, so then they called it War Z. Then they got in trouble for calling it War Z, so then they had to change the name to Infestation Survival Stories. And there was all kinds of issues. If you go online, you can look and you can see all kinds of issues with that. And then finally, I don't know if they've closed that game or what. Well, now they've released this new version. Now this is Ramiro's Aftermath, and it's on Steam for free and stuff like that. But again, it's full of hackers and stuff. So this guy's going to demonstrate some hacks. Now he's got like ESP. He can see all the different stuff that's in the map, so he doesn't have to worry about finding stuff because now he can see it all over the map. He has an aimbot and other stuff. All right, let me. So now he can see where all the zombies are. He can see where other people are coming at him. So for him, it's not really survival because he can see you coming from a mile away. So how much fun was it for that guy that he just killed? And it tells you there's one player near you. So if your core mechanics are bad, and you allow hacking and things like that, and you still haven't fixed that after your third different game attempt, something's wrong. Alright, this next example is Mortal Online. And Mortal Online was kind of an indie game, so a lot of people were kind of behind it. It was we're going to go back to old school, be hardcore, full loot PvP fantasy game. The problem is they didn't focus on the fun. If you look at their reviews, so there's already, and again, this hasn't been on Steam very long, since August. So it's only been here for less than 2 months, and there's already about 1,400 reviews, and more than half of those are negative reviews on the game. Now this game has actually been out for 5 years. It just came to Steam though. And in 5 years, they've only managed to attract like 3,000 different subscribers because the core of the game is off. You fight with swords, and the hit boxes are different, and somebody can hit you and be 4 feet away from you and swing their sword and hit you. So determining that the fighting element of the fighting game is bad. And if you jump on Steam, you can kind of look, but obviously there's some other issues with the game. But in 5 years, this company has never sat down and said, hey, let's focus on the core of the game, the fun part, and then add stuff later. And all they do is they keep adding new maps, and they keep adding new systems, and the stuff that they add has bugs. But instead of working on that stuff, they just keep moving on to, let's add more stuff, let's add more stuff. But nothing works. So in the end, all you have is some elite players that are like hanging around the city, waiting for people to come out, and then they get crushed. They lose all their loot, they don't enjoy the game, and then they quit. So again, after 5 years of being out there, this game has only been able to attract 3,000 subscribers, and that is worldwide. And this game has been advertised and mentioned on every gaming site out there. If you go to whatever gaming site that you look at that covers online games, you can find that Mortal Online has either advertised there or people have talked about it there. And it's been free to play for like 3 years. So another perfect example of a game that didn't focus on fun. So that's why when we talked about designing your game, we said the very first thing you should do, when you actually start doing creating the game after you've got your design documents and everything done, is work on the core gameplay. If the core gameplay, if you can't get that set, you just need to scrap the whole idea because it's not going to be a fun game. Alright, so moving on. So finding the fun factor, again, gameplay comes first, and I can't repeat that enough. You've got to have fun. If I can have a shooting game where I can be a square and you can be a square, and I've got and I can see my crosshair and you can see your crosshair, and the movement and the fun and the shooting is fun, and we can have fun as squares. Imagine how much more fun we can have when we actually put the graphics in. So either get the feature right or leave it out. As you're adding different things to the game, hey, if something doesn't work, just pull it out. You can always add it in later on. Once games release, there are always patches and updates, or maybe you're going to add it for a DLC and make even some more money. But if it doesn't work at first, don't put it in. Again, design around the player. Who's going to play your game? Focus on that person, that target audience. Alright, if there's parts of the game that aren't fun, take them out or try to automate them. In a lot of the online games, like I'm playing one called ArcAge, and mining is just mind-numbingly boring. If I need to mine for stone to build houses, I need to mine for stone to make like little runes that I can use to teleport different places, things like that. But mining is terrible. So what they did was they went to the cash shop and they said, hey, we're going to put a drill in here for $3 and this will mine for you. And you're like, woohoo, for $3 it's worth it. So sometimes that can be money-making stuff. So remember, always stay on that true vision. When you do your design document, stay with it. And they talk about strive for harmony, elegance, and beauty, blah, 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 blah. That's all great and stuff, but, in the end, you just want a fun game. And what's neat is, let me show you something real quick. Alright, so here we are at the site for Unity, and Unity is a game-making software that's relatively easy to use, and this is what we kind of covered at Stark State. But if I go here and I go to Community, and I think I want the Forum, and then Getting Started. So whatever your issue is with Unity, like if you want to learn more about making 2D or animation or graphics, they have a bunch of stuff, but you want to get started, and then, the 100 Orcs. So basically, this guy talks about his 1-year process where he went through and made this game called 100 Orcs, and then he released it free on this website, GameJolt. And then he talks about things that went right, and then he talks about things that went wrong. And one thing that was neat was he had unrealistic expectations. He was trying to put too much into the game, and he tried to add too much to the game as he got going, because he kept as you're building the game, you're going to keep having more and more ideas. You need to stop eventually and just put those ideas, write them on paper and put them in a jar or something. Like I have like a big pretzel jar. That's like a big 1-gallon thing that would hold pretzels, and I cut a hole in the lid piece, and then on I always have 3x5 cards around me. And whenever I think about something like a game that I want to make or a cool mechanic to a game I'd like to see, I write it down on a 3x5 card and pop it in there so I don't forget that. And then later on, when I'm looking for ideas or something, I go to the can or the jar. Alright, then your book jumps into the hierarchy of challenges. And then from lowest to highest, you have the atomic challenge, then you have the submission, and then you have the mission, and then you finally complete the game. So at first, your challenges should be, relatively simple, and a lot of times you can use those challenges to kind of show players how to do things. Like you may have a spot in the map where you want to show the player how far he can jump, so you make a really big like ravine, and the player has to try to jump it. And then once they do, then they know how to jump it. You may have a place in the map where you can only go up, and the player's like, crap, what do I do now? And then they kind of figures out that how he can only go up. So instead of building a tutorial into the game, you can actually build, just small entry levels kind of things that kind of teach the player himself without having a tutorial. Because sadly, most people skip the tutorials in games and just try to jump right in. All right, and then informing the player about challenges. Obviously, the players games tell the player about explicit challenges. Sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's audio, sometimes you have to read text on the screen, but there's something there that tells you the challenge is there. And they give you instructions on here's the challenge and here's what you need to do to solve it. So and so needs some leather, so go kill 10 pigs and bring them back, and that's kind of your challenge. Or it might be, gather these 3 parts and then put them together to form this thing, and then when you form the thingamabob, then do this with it. So lots of different things you can do. Intermediate level challenges, the most interesting games offer multiple ways to solve the objective or to get over obstacles. If you can stimulate a player's brain and make them think about different ways to do things, and have them talking with their other friends, dude, here's how I solved it. Oh, dude, that's really cool, but I solved it like this. And then they're all talking like, oh, that's so neat. What if we could try this? And they've got different ideas, and they're talking about it after class and things like that. That builds a lot of rapport for your game, and then people like that will go and tell other friends, and then other people will hear them talking about it, and your game will spread. So just be sure to recognize and reward victory. So every time a player gets through a partial challenge or a challenge or that kind of stuff, make sure they're given a reward and they're recognized. Oh hey, you're the greatest, and here's this. All right, one game that does this really well is WildStar, and WildStar recently came out free to play, just a few weeks ago or something like that. But every time you gain a level, you get this cool message that says something. So here's a couple of them.
Oh, you leveled up. Way to go, Cupcake. Whoa, look at you. Time to crack some skulls. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, now things are gonna get real. Right on! You're getting to be a real badass. Not bad on the eyes either. Oh snap! That was f***ing awesome!
Alright, but you get the idea. So every level there's some cool message, and eventually you just start playing just to hear the cool messages. Alright, moving on. So, simultaneous atomic challenges. Basically this is just a lot of things happening at one time. You have multiple enemies. If you're in a simulation game, there's a bunch of different things going on at the same time. If you're in like an RPG strategy game, there could be attacks coming from all sides to your base. So you're trying to get that player to move faster and give them a sense of urgency and create a little bit greater stress. Alright, and then your game gives you a couple terms. Intrinsic skill required is the skill needed to overcome a challenge in an unlimited amount of time. If I've got 5 hours to figure out how to get through Donkey Kong, I may eventually get it, where somebody else may get it faster. So the key thing is there, the unlimited amount of time. Alright, stress is the effect of time pressure on the player's ability to overcome a challenge. And you can do this in multiple ways. You can add a clock, and say, hey, you have to get this done in 30 seconds or stuff like that. And then absolute difficulty is the skill required plus the time pressure. So now not only do you have to solve it, but you have to solve it in this amount of time. So it combines the intrinsic skill with the stress element as well. Alright, so commonly used challenges, test speed and reaction time, test the accuracy and precision, test intuitive understanding of physics, timing and rhythm, things like that. We've all played some dance game where you have to like have rhythm and you have to meet certain patterns at certain times. Guitar Hero was another big one like that. And if the game's too easy and it seems like it's getting kind of boring, maybe reduce the time for those things and see if that will help add some fun to it. All right, and then they talk about logic and mathematical challenges. Boo. And they talk about, formal logic puzzles don't require outside knowledge, of different things. So it's not like trivia or anything like that. And we just add more objects that can be manipulated to make it harder. So, you want to avoid puzzles that can only be solved by trial and error. Someone should be able to look at it and put it together in their mind to solve it. And then mathematical challenges, stay away from those. Those are bad. You never want to do math. All right, races and time pressure. Be the first to accomplish a goal can be combined with other challenges. Be the first to get to the end of the goal and run over 12 hobos in Grand Theft Auto, or get to the finish line and be chased by 15 police vehicles. So you can add different pieces to that time pressure. All right, trivia games a little bit harder. And you really have to be careful to make sure that the source where you're getting your questions from is accurate. All right, memory challenges, hooray! Great for kids games, although a lot of adults are starting to do this too. There's some website that has some thing that works challenges for your brain, blah, blah, that kind of stuff. You can do pattern recognition, and you don't have to stay with just one of these either. A lot of these games, especially with like WildStar, as you're completing different quests, some quests will come up and you actually have to solve some kind of pattern recognition, where it's like the old Simon game and the different colors start blinking on the screen, then you have to follow those colors. And if you miss, then you fail the mission and you got to go back or something like that. A lot of times they give you memory where they flip 2 cards over and then they show you the blank card and say, okay, now you got to figure out where these 2 cards were at. So don't be afraid to incorporate several of these challenges in your game. Alright, then you have exploration challenges, where you have to kind of explore and get around. If it's too hard, maybe you want to provide a map. You can lock doors, and then they have to go find the keys, things like that. And speaking of exploration challenges, alright, I'm back to Unity's site. And if you go to unity3d.com, you can also go to Learn and Tutorials. And they have a stealth survival game. Now it says you can only use version 4 point whatever, but if you go to get Unity and free download, now you can pick older versions over here, and you can pick an older version. Although actually, so I can go to 4 and I can pick like 4, that kind of stuff. So again, if I go back to the different demos, I want to go tutorials. And the stealth tutorial, again, very easy to build. They have all the assets there. They walk you through, hey, here's a video, do this, do this, do this, do this. So
welcome to the Stealth Beginner Tutorial Project. In Stealth, you play the role of Ethan, a teenager who has stumbled across the simulation zone of Unity Labs whilst on a tour of the facility. Finding yourself in the midst of a hostile environment, you must sneak around, avoid the guards and security cameras, unlock laser gates, and find the keycard to escape the simulation. During the 4 chapters of this project, you will learn how to set up game systems and create a player-responsive.
Alright, but you get the idea. So in the 2D class, we do the roll ball, we do the space shooter, and then I think that's the only 2 that we do in the 2D class. We might actually do the survival tutorial too. And then the 3D class, we kind of build our own games. So those tutorials are there. They're really easy. Well, let's say not really easy, but especially the first time. But they're typically like, for beginner, and if you start here and kind of work across, it kind of helps. So if you get bored over Christmas break or spring break, check it out. Alright, so then there's exploration challenges. Ooh, I already talked about those. Other exploration traps, mazes, illogical space, just different things you can kind of throw in. Teleporters, maybe you've got hidden objects somewhere, or Easter eggs. If you collect these 3 weird things and you put them together, it makes some weird Easter egg. That's like a special reward. All right, so there's typically conflict in each game, and it depends on the game for the conflict. Like in that stealth game we just looked at, the conflict is I got to get out before anybody sees me, and I have to make sure I'm not seen. So that's the challenge, because if they see you, you have no weapon, and you get killed by the robots. So the conflict can be, strategy, could be tactics, could be logistics. You have to get so much food, or else your character will die every, 5 minutes or something like that. Could be survival, could just be staying away from enemy forces like stealth, that kind of stuff. Then there's economic challenges. You're trying to accumulate resources, or accumulate money, or you're trying to raise your Sims to have babies and then raise their Sims and that kind of stuff. And then they start talking about conceptual reasoning and lateral thinking puzzles. Woo, big words. And basically what they're saying is there should be some challenges in there that maybe kind of like make the user use their brain. It can't just be a brainless game, although some great games are like that, like Pac-Man. Although eventually with Pac-Man you kind of see the pattern, and then you start thinking about the pattern, you start observing the ghost. So there is some lateral thinking or some conceptual reasoning that kind of goes into that. It's the same with Donkey Kong. You think it's just a simple game, but when you actually look at it, eventually you start seeing the barrels and you start timing the barrels so that you can jump and move up to different things before the next barrel comes on. So even the simplest games can use that to some degree. Alright, so actions for gameplay. Woohoo! Most actions are intended to meet challenges. I want to be able to shoot, that kind of stuff. Games offer fewer actions than challenges to limit the size of the user interface. Remember, like if you have looked at some of the pro World of Warcraft raiders and things like that, they've got so many action bars on their screen. It's crazy. You're like, how do you even think about with all that different stuff you have? How do you even see anything? But another thing is, don't design actions and stuff in a game that's not designed to solve a specific challenge. If I can run up to a rock and then I just automatically go over it without jumping, then why have jumping in the game? What's the purpose of jumping? So make sure there's a reason behind the different actions you put in. And that action doesn't have to be to meet challenges. You may try to put in socialization, have the user participate in the story, have users creating different things. And again, that was a huge part of Minecraft, was the creation and self-expression, just the different things that people were building in the game. Alright, and then finally you have saving the game. So, obviously the reasons for saving a game, self-explanatory. They allow the player to leave and return later, let player recover from mistakes. I'm a big fan of the XCOM series. It's a turn-based game. And I always make a squad, and I always name it my friends' names and that kind of stuff. So when somebody gets killed, I'm like, oh, man. And then I have to go back to a save because I don't want that person to die because he's my bud. That kind of stuff. And there have been missions in that game, especially the newer one, the XCOM Unknown, or XCOM Enemy Unknown, whatever it is, where I've spent over an hour trying to get past a certain mission without having a player die, and I'll get halfway through and then somebody will die, and I'll go boop, gotta restart it and go back to a save game, and do that for over and over again because I want to be able to figure out how to solve it without losing any of my players. But the problem is obviously that interferes with immersion. How realistic is it that I can get through all missions with all of my players, and by the end, they're all super max level because none of them died and they got level or they leveled up with each mission. So I didn't have the experience, having a new guy in my squad, later on in the game, or stuff like that. And it also made some of the other missions kind of easier, reducing tension. So you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Do I want to add saves? Do I want to let the user save anywhere he can, or do I want to have it so there's only periodic saves and only places where I've set? Like when they first go to a level, things like that. But you might also want to offer them options. One of the things I love about XCOM, it allows me to play how I want to. There's an Iron Man mode where you can't make saves. There's another mode where you can only save the game at the very start of the mission. So if you get to the very end and you lose a guy and you want to start it over, you're going to go all the way to the back. So I tend to play it where I can keep making saves all through the mission. That way I only have to go back for a few minutes. But the options are there. I can play any way I want to. So after I get done playing my way, I might try to play another way. So I'll get more longevity out of the game. So you can save a game. You might have a password to restart a level. You might have a save file or a save slot. You may only give them 2 slots to save games, things like that. But you typically want to allow them at least some way to save the game, whether it's back at the beginning of the mission or the beginning of a level or something like that. Because obviously the first time players typically encounter intermediate and bigger challenges. They don't always solve them correctly the first time, and then it's like, oh crap, I gotta go back and do the whole thing all over again, and that's the last thing you want to do. Nobody wants to play for an hour and then have their player dying like, oh crap, I gotta do this all over again. So here's an example, and it's actually listed on 10 stupidly hard video games made by Sadist. But Dark Souls. A lot of people don't play Dark Souls because when it came out, it was so hard that their friends would say, dude, don't play that game, it's crazy hard, it's not even fun. So, bottom line, your game needs to be fun, but not a work of labor. If I have to keep, oh crap, I gotta go do this again. Oh, I got killed, I'm gonna go do this again. Oh, frick this game, I'm gonna go play something else. That's not what you want. So sometimes saving game options in different places can fix that. Playtesting obviously can detect that too. Alright, and then the summary of that. So that kind of wraps it up. So again, if you have any questions about anything, send them to me. Obviously, I'm there Monday through Friday, and I have been actually checking my email on Saturdays and a little bit on Sundays. So if you need something, email me. Other than that,